everyone, how is it going? It is Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. And since it's raining outside, I had a little bit extra time on my schedule to do a cosplay-based design. And yeah, if you were watching earlier, I did today's makeup live on YouTube. This is my cosplay for Ian Lightfoot from Disney's Onward. Now, Onward is the story of two elf brothers whose father had passed away years ago, and they discover that he had left a little note for them and a way to bring him back for just one day. And Ian doesn't know he has the ability to use magic, but he is able to restore his father's legs. Yes, just half his father's body. And they have to go on a quest to find the magical ingredients so they can bring the rest of their father back to life, so they could spend the day with him. Yeah, it was one of the first shows that was released as streaming from last year. At least that's how I watched it, was just streaming it on Amazon Prime. And yeah, I thought it was a fun book, but it got me thinking about fantasy worlds and fantasy characters. Whoop. Pop goes the weasel. So last year I started to work on a book idea that I had, and I haven't made as much progress on developing the book and writing it as I had hoped. Just haven't found the motivation to finish what I had started. I'm a big procrastinator, so yeah, that's probably playing part of it. Just haven't quite found that motivation to see where the story goes beyond the first outline that I created. But when an author writes a fantasy book, they have some decisions to make about the world that the book is going to take place in. Is it going to be Earth? Is it a city? Is it a place that we know? Or is it somewhere just created solely for the purpose of the book? And all of those decisions impact the type of story that the author is able to tell. So like the Harry Potter series takes place in more or less modern time. It takes place in the UK, in England, and whether all of the cities really exist or not is not really that significant. But they more or less explain it as it's a hidden place, that the train station is right where the train station is for everyone else. It's just behind a pillar that you have to walk right through to get to the train to Hogwarts. So yeah, I've read a lot of fantasy and other fictional books, and sometimes they take place in the modern times, sometimes they take place in the more medieval world where we were less populated, less technology, more swords and knights. Sometimes the stories are taking place in places like Europe or the United States, cities you might know of New York, or other times they are taking place in some fantasy world, some fantasy kingdom that doesn't really exist. And the one thing I've realized with reading books is every time there's like a fantasy world, I know about the real world. I know about the modern times. I know a little bit about historical times and historical people. But when you start creating a fantasy story, it's, okay, there are dragons. Do people know there are dragons? How big are the dragons? What are they friendly? Are they mean? Are they magical? Are there elves and other characters? Are the places you mentioned places people should recognize, or are they places they won't recognize? So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into writing and telling a fantasy story. And I think if you're creating a realm that doesn't really exist, you have to explain it a little bit more. Give people a foundation of, what is this place? What is it like? What time frame is it? What technologies exist in this world? When it comes to magic, how powerful is the magic? So yeah, every book I've read that has dragons, like the Aragon series, there is a dragon rider. There's very few dragons left. Dragons and humans pair up with each other and share their magic, share their lives, and become interlinked. Other books with dragons are completely independent of people. There's a book series that I've read where dragons, I don't know, that to me the books almost seems like they're more like birds, and they're small enough to fly around and flap, land in trees. So they're not these huge 30-foot dragons. They're 6-foot dragons. So I'd like every fantasy author, when they create a world, has to spend time describing the world. What is that world like? What would you recognize? So the series, the book that I'm working on, it is more or less based in the real world, but a world where magic does exist, for a few. Not many people know about it. It's probably a smaller magical community than the Harry Potter series, but it's a hidden world. It's a place that most people would never see, would never discover. In the Harry Potter series, wizardry, the ability to use magic, is somewhat genetic. There are lines of families that, if two parents are wizards, there's a 80-90% chance that their children will also be wizards. If people are non-wizards, there's a 80-90% chance that their kids won't be wizards. There are some people like Hermione that was born to non-wizarding families, and there are people who are born to wizards that have no magical abilities. They're just aware of what's going on. They just can't interact in the way a wizard can. My story is going to be based on a world where it is not genetic, it is not passed on. It is just something that randomly happens, and more often than not, it happens to someone who has no background in magic. So it doesn't run in families. It actually is the opposite of, if you have the ability to use magic, odds are your kids will not. So yeah, that's just sort of like when you're creating a fantasy world, what rules exist? How powerful of a magic can you do? What is your limit on using magic? The same thing sort of like superheroes. Is there a limit to how fast Superman can fly, how strong he can be? What is his weakness? What is your limit? In like the Aragon series, you use magic, but the energy has to come from you. So if you don't have enough magic in you and you try too big a spell, you could kill yourself by exhausting all of your energy to put it into that spell that you just cast. So yeah, these are all things that, when it comes to fantasy writing, the author has to figure it out, of what are the rules for magic? Who knows about it? Who has access to it? How powerful is it? What kind of magic can people do? Is it based on a spell? So is there a language of magic? So is it just open sesame? Or is it thought-based? Yeah, how do you control a spell? Is it based on potions and things like that? Or is it based on energy production? So we have our, this is our staff, our magical rod that we're going to use to summon the magic and control it and cast it in directions. We had a little bit of a conversation about creating fantasy worlds and sort of what has to go into thinking about it and how much the author has to communicate to the reader so they understand the world. And this is our Onward Ian Lightfoot cosplay design. So thanks for watching today's episode of the Technicolor Mike B Show. And as I mentioned, the makeup demonstration is also available on YouTube where you can see how I did today's makeup design. So until next time, see you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile. Thanks for watching.